just on the business side. We're going to be expanding, of course, into Europe, Canada, Japan, South Korea, amongst others. Australia's on the list. Going through regulatory. The regulatory work is going really, really great. We're putting infrastructure in place. We're going to see a big uptick in our manufacturing the very first week in June. So we'll have a big, stable supply. One thing for our brand partners to keep in mind to get a visual on this is that one 40-foot truckload of X2O machines is only 330 units. So
that's crazy when you think about it.
It is. So we have truckloads that have to go in and out through our order fulfillment center in order to get these out. So this is something entirely new for us, as you say. It's very different receiving and shipping out. So we're ramping up, but it's going extremely well. Our brand partners outside the U.S., one thing that we did, it started out as an act, but it's turned out to be an amazing blessing, is at least for the first 3,000 units, we're putting 3,500 BV on X2O instead of the 2,000 BV, and as a result, commissions are up over 50% from the week prior to the X2O launch. So we're going to do that in our international markets as well to kickstart it, and I know that'll be very welcome by our brand partners.
It will be very welcome by our brand partners, and it's incredibly generous of you. So I know everyone is super thankful that's happening. Not only the BV, but the QV as well. So the other thing that we're seeing on top of what you just talked about with the earnings going up last week is a lot of rank advancements happening and recognition happening because of this volume in the system as well. So it's very exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this is a product webinar, so
it is. So
I know we want to. What's your first
so
question?
Let's get focused.
What do you think people would like to know about X2O?
Well, I think let's start kind of high level, and maybe you can just, because you've talked about X2O on calls before. We talked about it at a conference last year, of course, but we've also had lots of new people join us since those conversations. So I want to start high level and just get you to walk us through the science behind X2O and what kind of ultimately led to its development.
Yeah, so great question. So, X2O was more or less 20 years in the making because one discovery builds on another. So as everyone in our LifeWave community knows, we have non-transdermal patches that stimulate the skin with light. So as I was thinking through what would technology look like in the future, where do I want to go with this? I have been developing new patches that people haven't seen yet that are going through tests. Whether or not that ever makes it to market, we'll see. But I had this fundamental idea that I would like to create a technology where you could release light directly inside the body. So with the patches stimulating the skin, that's great. People have benefited from that. There's, of course, active forms of light therapy, cold lasers, lamps. Those are all wonderful things. But what if we could release light directly inside of the body? What type of benefits could we expect to get from that? Initial go-to thought was water. And that's because our bodies are 65-70% water. So if we could somehow use water as a delivery system, that would mean that the light could go anywhere in the body and go directly to where it's needed. So that was the genesis. That was the beginning of the idea. And then there's a lot of prayer and a lot of hard work involved in going to the next step. So the next question is, let's say it's scientifically possible. What wavelengths of light would you want to put inside the body and why? So I have this hypothesis, and what we know is a reality is that all living organisms use light for communications. So we already have light inside of our body. And my hypothesis was that if we studied species that do not, there was biological models that we used, planaria, hydrox, lobsters, amongst others, ants. And my hypothesis was that the immortality, relatively speaking, of these organisms was linked to biophysics. It was linked to light emission, because we know that the energy systems of the body control the biochemistry. So it's self-evident that we think about moving our arm, and an electrical signal is sent from the brain through the nervous system, and that fires chemical energy in the muscle. So it's all done with electrical signaling. So my thought was that ultimately we'd be able to find a way to connect the light emissions in these species to their immortality. So we began to run some experiments and then also look at spectrophotometry data. So for the lobsters, where should I look? What's going to make the most sense? And I do a Bible study. And I thought back to what God said to Noah after the flood, which was, you can eat the animals. Apparently, before the flood, people were vegetarians. People were consuming fruit, vegetables. After the flood, were meat eaters. And God said, well, you can eat any of the animals, but you can't have their blood because that's where the life is. So I thought, maybe there's something in blood that we haven't discovered yet. So let's take a look at that. So I pulled up spectrophotometry data on lobster blood, and I found something pretty remarkable. That there were two specific wavelengths that were coming off the lobster blood, and then from previous work that we had done with planaria, we knew that 630 nanometers was a fundamental frequency that was involved in mitochondrial function, and there's not any mitochondria in blood. So I thought, okay, I know that wavelength of light is there in lobsters. It has to be. So let's work with this data set of 550 nanometers, 630, and 710, approximately. So we began to do this work. The first experiments were to take water and run it through an electrolyzer, split it into hydrogen and oxygen, and in the presence of a platinum catalyst, reform the water, but do it in the presence of a specific type of energy field, and see if that would alter the properties of the water. And it turned out that it did. So a few months after that, I was doing a Bible study and on gematria, and I was looking at the first sentence of the book of Genesis. And if we convert all of the Hebrew letters over to numbers, it comes down to 2,701. And 2,701 is equal to 37 times 73, 3773. And 37 is the 12th prime number, and 73 is the 21st prime number, 1221. So the way I processed that was that God was trying to tell us that there is a ratio in the numbers in that first sentence that we should be looking at. That mirroring is not a coincidence. So then what you do is you take different words. So the first sentence, of course, is in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. So you take different segments of words saying, in the beginning, God, the heaven, the earth. You start combining different words, and you come up with the numbers 777, 888, 999. When I saw that, I said, I've seen this pattern before. And numerically, the ratio of 777, 888, 999 is identical to 550, 630, and 710. So the way I view this is that when God was creating all things, he put his signature in light, in living organisms that are immortal. And Moses, who wrote the book of Genesis, had no way of knowing that 5,000 years later we were going to have spectrophotometry equipment where we could uncover that. So to me, the Bible is truly divinely inspired. So this led, I'll wrap up with this. So that led then on a path to creating a technology where we could release these wavelengths of light into the body, and with the goal being, can we restore people that are in poor health back to good health? and some other improvements that we'll talk about.
I can't wait to talk. This might sound weird, but your brain is just so fascinating to me. Like, I can't, it's for someone like me who's not science oriented. And I know we have, brand partners on this call who are very, very much like you, really into the science. And then we have others who are less into the. I love the diversity that we have in our community. And I just, yeah, right. Like, it's so, and it's so special. And you have created this environment that, attracts those different types of people. And, we've all together created this community that I think is so special. So I love when you explain those things like that, because, I sure wouldn't have got there. And I think there's a lot of people on the call. Speaking to someone like me, who's not like a science gal, can you tell us more about how you actually get the light into the water?
It's a fantastic
how does that
question.
Happen?
Well, take one step back from that.
Okay.
Because it's a great question. But before we can answer it, we really want to know what is light, because it's something more or less take for granted each day. What's remarkable about this is that if we didn't have light inside of our body, we couldn't, because light controls everything. The energy systems of the body, electrical signaling, electromagnetic fields control everything in the body. So we literally can't survive. We can't exist without this energy body. And of course, this has been known for thousands of years, especially in Eastern medicine. And work with the energy body. This is not a mystical sense. This is the sense that we have the bioelectrical system running through the nerves. We have the acupuncture system, which are essentially fiber optic. We have biophoton emission and so forth. So we work with these systems, and we can benefits with our health that wouldn't be achieved specifically just through biochemistry. So we think of light as a wave, or some people think of it as a particle. And this is how we're educated. And as we're growing up, we're educated in science about wavelengths of light. And in classical physics, all of this is completely true, but it's not the entire. So if we go back hundreds of years, we go back to Isaac Newton, whose formulas on gravity are still used today. His belief was that light's a stream of particles. He called them corpuscles. One of his contemporaries had believed Hudgens thought that light was a wave, but Newton, because he was so back in the day, his prevailed. And it wasn't until the 1800s that we had this double slit experiment by Young. And essentially, you take a stream of photons, you run them through two different slits, one another, and behind the slits, you'll have dark and light bands. And this is a interference phenomena with a wave. So waves can either combine or collide and be disrupted, and that's what forms the band. So in the early 1800s, experiments were done that pretty much proved that light was a wave. And then in later 1800s, around 1870 or so, you had James Maxwell, one of the most famous scientists of all time, who gave us Maxwell's equations. And those are still used today. And Maxwell was able to show the relationship between electricity and magnetism and how an electromagnetic wave would propagate. And so Maxwell calculated the speed of an electromagnetic wave, and it turned out to be the speed of light. So he reasonably came to the conclusion that light is an electromagnetic wave. So as they said during the COVID pandemic, the science was settled, right? Light is a wave. However, then Albert Einstein, in 1905, we think of him as giving us the theory of relativity, but he actually won the Nobel in 1905 for his work on the photoelectric effect. And to make a long story short, photoelectric effect is able to show that one wave, the red spectra, will not cause electron emission off of a metal, whereas a blue light will. And that's something only a particle would do. It wouldn't be a wave. So Einstein was producing evidence to show that light was a particle. So here we have an extraordinary dilemma. We have data to show light is a wave and data to show that light is a particle. So it can't be both. So how do we reconcile this? Well, it doesn't get reconciled until the 1940s with Richard Feynman and 3 other physicists. And they come up with this concept. And to put this in perspective, it is the most well-tested theory in all of physics. It's accurate out to 12 decimal places. And this is quantum electrodynamics. So quantum electrodynamics defines light as a quantum object. So we call these photons, of course. But what's extraordinary about this is that it means you calculate the path of light based on probabilities and based on amplitude. So we can think of light as a disturbance of the fabric of space. It is not a particle or a wave traveling through space in the conventional sense. It just happens that the formulas that we use in conventional classical physics, I should say, all those formulas hold up, because that's the probability that light is going to travel in a straight line still remains true. But the means by which it does that has to do with disturbance of the fabric of space and the probability of the direction that a photon will take. Okay, what does this all have to do with X2O? I'll wrap up here. So what this means is that if we treat light as a quantum object, what that means is that under the right conditions, we can create an interesting relationship between light and water. So water is H2O. Everybody knows this. If we look at the structure of water, it actually looks like a dipole. It is a dipole. And a dipole is used in radio transmission. Use antennas that are dipoles to transmit or receive an electromagnetic waves. So this means that light is capable of interacting with electromagnetic waves. So what do? Under the right conditions, which exist within X2O, we take light, we arrange it in the correct configuration, and we're able to treat water so it forms a pocket or a cavity, if you will. And this causes an oscillation adjacent water molecules. And this traps the photon. And the photon takes on a relative mass, hypothetically. So what this means is that we can form stable oscillations in water between water molecules that trap the light or trap the oscillation. When we drink the water, that light, that energy gets released inside of the body. So that's the short answer.
That is the short answer.
That's
okay.
The short answer.
That is the short answer. I think I'll speak for everyone by saying we're lucky we have you to think about these.
Thinking about these things.
I know you do, and we love that you said earlier that we take light for granted. Of course we do, right? We take light for granted. We take water for granted. I've never spent much time thinking about light or water, if I'm being honest, until I came to LifeWave. Obviously, now I am, think about those things much more than I ever did before. Okay, so I think that's super helpful for our brand partners to have like that explanation. When it comes to talking with prospective brand partners or prospective customers about the X2O water system, clearly they're not going to repeat all of that because they won't remember it, and they will lose most. But I think a common question that they're going to get, or maybe are already getting, because I know people are already having these conversations, creating those wait lists and stuff, is what fundamentally differentiates X2O from other water products on the market. I mean, no one else has light-infused water. That's the short answer. But
that's the short answer.
If you wanted to give a little more detail than that, tell us how you would answer that question.
Yeah, so first I would start off that this is a machine that produces light-infused water, and when you drink the water, it puts the light inside the body. That should capture people's attention.
I would think so.
Because that technology hadn't existed before. The other sides too, on a very basic level, when you put water in the reservoir, it's going to go through two separate stages of filtration. So this is a matter of practicality, that we remove pesticides, herbicides, microplastics, the forever chemicals, all that gets removed in the first stage, and then it goes through a carbon, which will also infuse the water with and then into a special patented light processing chamber. I wouldn't want people that hadn't heard of X2O before to get hung up that, oh, this is a water filter. Well, we have filtration, two stages of filtration, but that's a feature of the machine, and a feature of the machine is hydrogen infusion, but it's not the same as a hydrogen machine, right? It is really designed to infuse light into water. So when we form these coherent domains with light, it organizes them. It is similar to structure, but it gets there by a very different means. So let's say if we go back to the 1960s, 1970s, there was a product called Willard Water, which is a great product. And that is a product where you add minerals, very specific minerals, and it will help to organize the water molecules into a specific structure. This reduces surface tension, and it gets more water into the cell. So X2O is structured in, but we would really think of it more as being organized by these coherent domains. But the net end effect is that when you drink X2O, people will immediately notice that it's very, very smooth. You can drink an entire glass very quickly because it's so smooth. And that water will get into the cells where the water is needed much more efficiently. That's from a reduced surface tension. So that's a feature of the water that's very different than, let's say, an alkaline. We do get, the water is alkaline. It'll be a 9.4 on the pH scale, and because the filter adds a little bit of magnesium into the water result. So we are going to have a slightly alkaline. The water will work within about 15 seconds. So that's very different than other products that are, and we measured this bioelectrically. So we had people connected up to heart rate variability, EEG. Literally within 15 seconds, almost everyone was responding. We had an outlier but the vast majority of people, you can actually see the readings on the machine change about 15 seconds after. Another thing important about it was that when we look at the blood data, the urine data, bioelectrical data, 100% of the people tested, that's over 200, had statistically significant improvements in. So urine data is taken about 20 minutes or so. Afterwards, blood data is taken about 2 to 3 minutes after drinking the water. So the effects are very, very rapid. And they're profound. We even circulation improves from drinking this water very rapidly, just within a few minutes.
It's incredible. I feel like I've talked to people who do feel something very quickly, right? Maybe it's 15 seconds, maybe it's 30, whatever. Like, it's quick. And other people that don't maybe feel something happening in their body, because it's not like we're all connected to a machine that are doing blood tests, right? So I always, like, I feel like people are probably going to maybe not overstate, or what I don't want is for brand partners to be like, you'll feel something in 15 seconds, because some people might. What can people talk about from your perspective when they're talking to prospective brand partners, prospective customers, about what they can realistically expect as they incorporate X2O into their daily routine, right? Because I just feel like we don't want to go out and be like, you'll feel something in 15 seconds. Right. You might not, but you're gonna get benefits. So realistic expectations, like, how should they talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a great question. So the first thing is, when people start their day, they have a glass of X2O. So they get up in the morning, and there's multiple reasons for this. But for example, years ago, there was a study done in Japan which showed that if you had a glass of water upon waking, it was much easier to lose weight and to lose body fat. So that's a compelling reason for
that right there is
especially
compelling
us
to
here
a lot
in
of
the
people.
United States, right?
Yes.
Drink your thing instead of coffee. But I'd recommend that because people are just getting up, they're on an empty stomach, and they'll tend to feel the effects better when they're on it. And of course, you can have the water later in the day as well, no problem with that. But I'd recommend starting. What most people will see, and what we saw through the studies, is that the water improves mitochondrial function and improves the amount of energy being produced in the cell. So what people will notice is that they get, for about a 3 to 5 hour window after drinking X2O, that they had elevated levels of energy. Very natural, not like a caffeine buzz. They don't crash. And that's one of the biggest benefits of the system. We had one of our leaders, I'm not going to mention her name, but she was sharing this with me at one of the leader events. And I was drinking X2O and didn't notice any benefit. And I didn't think it was working on me. And then I had a glass much later in the day, like at 5 o'clock. And then 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock at night, I was still going, which was unusual for her. And then she realized, oh my God, this water is working on me. So one of the cautions that we have is that because it does provide an energy, not want to have that later in the day, like 5, 6 o'clock, because it may end up keeping them up. That happens to me all the time. So that means improved is going to show up. Well, both of these are going to show up in athletic. One of the things that we saw with the water is that it turns on muscle protein synthesis. So it means that if people are exercising, they're doing resistance training properly, and they're getting enough protein, they might better stamina, better strength increases, better body composition from drinking. There's some things that I can't talk about because it wouldn't be compliant.
Right.
I know people a few glasses of X2O per day, which is kind of uncharted territory for us, and they've had outstanding health and fitness benefits.
I've had that question fairly frequently. Like, is there a limit of how much someone should drink in a day? There are people, I believe, doing what you just said, drinking maybe 4 or 5 glasses a day.
That's right.
Is that okay? Is what they're asking me.
So there's several different ways of answering that question. It's a fantastic question. So the first thing is, when we've done our studies, we measure the results after only 1 glass. So this is to say people can drink 1 glass and they're going to get a benefit. They don't have to consume multiple glasses. The second thing is, from a regulatory perspective, we are not allowed a number of glasses per day because that would be considered dosing, and then that's getting into supplement drug territory.
Right.
So we have to just treat this as this is clean, healthy water. Drink as much as, but I'm sure that we'll find over time there's probably an optimum window. So, for example, if we see the effect lasting 3 to 5 hours, then 2 glasses of water, 500 ml glasses per day, is probably a good place, a good window to be in.
Got it. Okay. That's a lot of benefits. And I think, it's...
Oh, there are more.
Okay, we'll keep going.
There are many. Well, we should talk about.
Let's talk about more of that.
Yeah, we should. We should talk about some. One of the things that people have remarked on is they drink a glass of X2O and then they're running to the bathroom to pee.
I have heard this too.
So the detox is very quickly, and for most people, that's totally fine, and it's absolutely. We have had people that are going through chemotherapy wanting to. My opinion on this, which is based on many different studies and a long history of natural medicine, is that first you have to work with your doctor, who won't know anything about X2O, but they should be cautious because there is a rapid detox with X2O that they might want to try half a glass first. In practical terms, what we've seen is when people go through chemo, they drink X2O, the detox effect is very, and sometimes they drink a full glass and then they should wait a day before drinking another glass. So people going through chemo might want to take half a glass, see how they respond to it, and then work into it gradually. But there is a powerful detox effect with this.
I think people are seeking detox options, right? It feels like it's something that we hear a lot about on social media, or just from friends or whatever. So I think that's a super important benefit to talk about.
We also can think about some of the fundamental things. Is that hydrogen infusion? Hydrogen acts as an antioxidant. It's probably it is the simplest antioxidant and yet very, very powerful. To put this in, since most of us drive, we put a fossil fuel into the car, either gasoline or let's say diesel. But the energy content of a petroleum-based fuel, fossil fuel, is 11,000 watt-hours per kilo. On the other hand, hydrogen is 34,000 watt-hours per kilo. So hydrogen, of course, is the very first element. It's as simple as you can get, yet has 3 times more energy on a weight than a fossil fuel does. So power of hydrogen should not be underestimated. So it's a very powerful antioxidant. So it's going to help protect the cell from oxidative stress like any other antioxidant. So that's yet another benefit.
Absolutely. From your perspective, on top of those, which I think are critical in having intelligent conversation, from your perspective, what are the most important things that our brand partners should understand about X2O so that they can really confidently communicate its value to a customer? This is obviously a different conversation than maybe they've been having about patches at $100. This is a big investment for people. So I think people just want to feel really confident that they know what to say about the value.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a great point. If we look at the price of, depending if it's a customer or brand partner, of $5,500, we would break that down over to a cost per week or a cost per glass, and then it's actually very, very. There are no other technologies that provide this suite of benefits and this suite of results. So it's actually very, very inexpensive when we break it down as a cost per week or cost per glass. So that would be an important thing to be. And that's actually, I know, some of the things we're building into our sales materials, that when people look at the 50, it's like, okay, that's expensive. Can I afford it? It's actually very consistent with market price on other water processing machines, but of course, this produces a lot more benefits.
Right.
But because of the financing, you break it down, and it's way less. The other thing I think that from a technical perspective is we look at the phenomena of aging and many, many different models of aging. So this is to say there is a free radical theory of aging, that aging is an accumulation of a model that says, well, these dead cells accumulate, they're called zombie cells. This creates oxidative stress, and that leads to aging. Gene expression, so we look at the genes as being a data set, and the data set becomes corrupted or that changes over time. There's the telomere-based theory of aging. So as telomeres shrink, cells can't replicate more than 50 times or so. It's called the Hayflick limit. So by the time we get to age 70, we can't make new cells. So there's all these models for aging, but they all have one thing in common, and that is, as we age, the cell goes from a state of coherence to a state of, we can see this visibly in cells where they shrink. It's called the, and we go from a state where the interior of the cell, where the organelles are, from a a state of high coherence, high organization, to now where that system is breaking down. And that's where disease will occur, where the electrical charge on the cell begins to diminish, the organization of the cell becomes corrupted. That means the signaling inside and outside the cell has become, and we could even define different is a defect in cell signaling. Of course, we aren't making disease claims here.
Of course not.
But when we know, so what is exciting about this and about the future and future work that we'll do with X2O is this idea that we're putting water inside of the body, that water has a very rapid biological effect, that it's ramping up energy production, the flow of energy, all of these benefits and more. It says something that this water is working on a very, very fundamental level, that you take someone that's a little bit older, whose cells are starting to go into a state of losing their coherence, and give them more vitality. That to me is the most exciting part about the technology.
I love that answer for a lot of reasons. One, I think, and as we're having conversations with people, generally speaking, more listening, less talking is a good approach, because you really want to hone in on what that customer is looking for or what their need is, right? The reason I say I love your answer is that you gave the very practical, like, break down the math for the practical. And there are a lot of those people, right? Like that appeals to a lot of people. Like, just show me how this is affordable. And then you also gave, I think, a great answer between the last question that we talked about and this one for the less practical purchasers, the more, value-driven purchasers, or the more emotional purchasers. Like, I feel like there's something in there for everyone. And the aging part of it, maybe it's my own age, but I feel like, we're all talking about aging, and everyone is aging all the time. Like, if we pause for 5 seconds, we both just got to bleed. But it's happening to everyone, and I think, whether you're as a brand partner, whether your audience is obviously there's a lot there to talk about, but I also think that people are becoming more aware of aging, the effects of aging, and starting to think about aging a lot younger than they ever have before, right? Like, I don't know that I feel like I didn't think about it that much in my 20s or 30s, but now I feel like people are starting to think about it in their 20s or 30s. So starting a habit like this early has to be good for you, right?
I'm going to tell you something that you've probably never heard before.
Ooh,
and that's going. In all of us, there's actually part of our bodies that never age. And this is, from my perspective, this is actually proof of God. Physics, ironically, because scientists can be some of the most skeptical people, and they can not all, many that believe in God. But what's interesting, physics indirectly proves the existence of God. So the part of our bodies that never age is light. Our body has light in every cell, and that part of our body doesn't age. And here's the reason. I use a term in physics called space-time. And what that means is that time and space are intimately connected. And we all know about the speed of light, and that hypothetically, theoretically, nothing moves faster than light. We'll just put that off to the side for a moment. And there is an between mass and time, momentum. And so what this means is that you and I are sitting right now, so we are moving through time at 1 second per second, which is pretty obvious. However, if all of a sudden we were accelerated in a rocket ship, time would start to slow down. And this is measurable. And if we take the example of the photon, which moves at that as you approach the speed of light, time slows down so much that at the speed of light, time doesn't move at all. You're frozen in time. So what that means, if the photon on its journey from the sun to Earth, it would take 8 minutes from the perspective of human beings, but from the perspective of the photon, it was instantaneous. So what that means is that photons are immortal. And our spirit, let's say, is a light body that's held in coherence. So in our lives, we want to move closer to God. We want to move closer to that source of light, because not living in God's presence is living in darkness, and living in darkness is death, because light is immortal and outside of time and space. So I know I took a sidetrack there, but this is just to say that light is something very, very fundamental to the world around us. It's very special. It's like nothing else that exists. And of course, water as a medium, there's nothing else quite like water. It's very, very strange, its properties. So to answer your question directly, yes, by the time we're 25, we start to age. We can measure that biologically. The fibroblasts start to decrease in the production of collagen. So we should do our best from as early as possible to have a lifestyle where we're exercising, eating healthy, getting plenty of rest, hydrating, taking supplements, hopefully using the patches, managing stress in our lives, feeling love for others, doing all of these things, and we can have a healthy, abundant, great life.
I'm tempted to have my kids come into the office and spend some time with you.
Oh, sounds like fun.
Teens and early 20s, they need to hear that,
Bring
of that,
Bring
from someone other than me. So
yeah, I'll sign up for it.
Please never apologize for your sidetracks, because okay, as we wrap up today, what do you hope people that are watching right now understand most clearly about X2O as they head out into the world to share it?
To me, X2O represents, and I say that because many people are addicted to energy drinks. And now we have a way for people to drink water, which is healthy and they need it anyway. And now it's a non-stimulant way to improve energy production and energy flow. We have a way to improve circulation. People are just going to feel better. Many people, they drink X2O and they feel more mentally aware. They feel more mentally awake. Me too.
Yes, that is one of my major benefits from it.
Yeah, and so it is so basic and fundamental to life that people consuming X2O can benefit in some really extraordinary ways, many ways that we can't talk about or we haven't done studies to show, but we see it anecdotally. So after years of going through the struggles that we have in trying to turn this laboratory to a functional machine that you just press a button now and you get light-infused water, it's pretty. I'm thrilled that it's finally at market and people can benefit from it and experience how dramatic the change in their quality of life can be.
That's incredible. I know I said in my last question that I was going to wrap up with that one, or have you wrap up, but I changed my mind, because I think one thing that we should just spend a couple is X39 and how X2O complements. Like, I would never want someone to walk away from this conversation thinking, okay, great, I'm going to get X2O and then I'm going to stop patching. So can you spend just a minute on, from your perspective, how they work together and why you still need X39?
Yeah, well, actually, we have parts to this now.
Yes, we do.
With this. The beauty of this is that what we found over the years, and this is very consistent with studies that have been done on acupuncture and acupressure, that people that are dehydrated do not get good benefits from acupuncture or acupressure, and the same with the patches. So for years, we've been recommending, hey, if you don't get the results that you're seeing that you want with the patches, drink a glass of water, be hydrated, and then off you go. So it will complement not only X39, but all the patches. Right. And then because the water is organized and the surface tension is lower, that means that you put nutrients in it, like from Cellular's morning, and those nutrients are going to be more efficiently delivered into the cell. So you actually get better benefits out of Cellular's morning, or if somebody wants to use a greens drink or a smoothie or what have you. So X2O complements the patches, our nutrition products, and so the system all works together.
And I can't wait to get into more conversations about that. We talked about it at our boot camp event a couple weeks ago in Dallas, and just that probably most conversations are still going to start with X39, right? So everybody needs X39. When people are ready for kind of the next level of benefits, introduce Cellular, and then when they're ready to take it, to the next level, that's when you'll probably bring X2O. And not that I think anyone's going to say no to someone who wants to start with X2O,
Right.
And then they're going to go backwards. But it's
Right.
going to be good for everybody's business to make sure that they've got people on an MSO with X39 and Cellular if they are, an X2O purchaser. So, but I think probably the natural conversation, if you're approaching somebody about LifeWave for the very first time, will still be to start with X39. So
yeah, I would agree. And
yeah.
that's, we've built the fastest growing company in the world with X39.
Exactly.
People should stay with that. But there is, the interesting thing is that there's an entire sector of our, such as the bean, when it's around the Kangen products, where people specialize in selling those higher end equipment. And of course, it's desirable because you can start earning a few $1,000s your very first month. It's not an income claim.
Of course not.
Right. No, this is to say people get started, they can earn $1,000 in commission from selling X2O. That's quite factual, right? So there's
factual.
The interesting, there's an entire segment of our industry that want to focus on the higher end products and earn a lot of commissions more rapidly. So there will be people that will go that route, but tried and true is X39.
Absolutely. All right. Well, David, I know that our field appreciates so much. You are willing to spend this amount of time every month pouring into them. I'm sure the pencils were flying or the keyboards were clicking as you were talking, as people are taking notes and just kind of formulating their own approach with people. And I just think it's such great information for our field to have. Again, whether you're more scientifically inclined and love to geek out with these conversations, or whether you're not so much and really just want to understand kind of those high level benefits and how to talk about it. So definitely going to be time well spent who spend the time with us today or recording later. So thank you again, Kate, everything that you do for all of us, and are so grateful for your genius.
Thank you, Janine. It's been a pleasure. Really
Thanks,
appreciate
David.
it.